In the prosperous village of Adukrom, Chief Kwame Poku ruled with an iron fist. He was known for his insatiable greed, accumulating vast wealth while his people struggled to make ends meet. His palace was adorned with gold, his barns overflowed with food, and his storerooms brimmed with fine cloths and rare treasures. Yet no matter how much he had, he always wanted more. The chief demanded the finest foods, the richest clothes, and the heaviest gold ornaments. Every harvest, he took the best portion, leaving his people with barely enough to survive. One fateful evening, a wandering old man arrived in Adukrom. His clothes were tattered, and his hair was grey with age. He leaned on a wooden staff, his frail body trembling with exhaustion. With a humble bow, he approached the palace gates and called out to the chief's guards. "Please, I have traveled far and am weary. A morsel of food and a sip of water is all I ask." The guards sneered but led him to the chief, who was seated on a grand stool, feasting on a plate of roasted goat and yam stew. The old man knelt before Chief Kwame Poku. "Great chief, you are blessed with more than enough. Please, share a little with a tired traveler." The chief laughed, his voice echoing through the grand hall. "Why should I give my finest food to a beggar?" he scoffed. "There is nothing in life for free. Be gone from my sight before I have my guards throw you out." The villagers watched in silence, their hearts heavy with sadness, but they dared not speak against their chief. The old man turned to face them, his eyes dark with warning. "Your chief's greed will bring a great misfortune upon this land," he said. "The spirits of the ancestors do not favor a man who hoards while others starve." With that, he turned and disappeared into the night, leaving the villagers murmuring among themselves. Despite the warning, Chief Kwame Poku continued his selfish ways. He decided to host the grandest feast Adukrom had ever seen, boasting that he would invite kings and nobles from faraway lands. He summoned his best hunters to gather rare meats, his farmers to harvest the ripest crops, and his cooks to prepare exotic dishes. No expense was spared. Golden plates were polished, and silk banners decorated the palace. On the night of the feast, tables overflowed with roasted antelope, spiced tilapia, fufu, and steaming bowls of jollof rice. Perfumed wines filled goblets, and skilled drummers played melodies of celebration. Laughter and music echoed through the palace halls as Chief Kwame Poku indulged himself more than anyone. He ate and drank without restraint, ignoring the hungry eyes of the villagers who stood outside the palace walls, smelling the delicious aromas they could never taste. But as the chief took a bite of his roasted boar, he suddenly choked. His throat tightened, and his eyes bulged. He gasped for breath, his hands clawing at his throat. The guests rushed to help, but it was no use. He collapsed onto the floor, his body trembling. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the choking stopped. He sat up, dazed and breathing heavily. "A strange illness," he muttered, shaking it off. "It means nothing." Yet, from that moment on, he found that no matter how much he ate, he was never full. Days turned to weeks, and Chief Kwame Poku's appetite grew unbearable. No matter how much he consumed, his stomach remained empty. He ate plate after plate, devouring food meant for an entire village in a single sitting. His once strong body became frail, his skin stretched tight over his bones, his once glorious robes hanging loose around his thinning frame. Yet still, the hunger gnawed at him like an unrelenting beast. The villagers whispered among themselves, recalling the old man's warning. "The spirits have cursed him," they said. "His greed has brought this upon him." Desperate, the chief summoned healers, shamans, and priests, but none could cure him. The medicine men chanted and sprinkled sacred herbs, but the hunger remained. The more he ate, the hungrier he became. His great wealth could no longer bring him satisfaction. The gold he once treasured felt meaningless, and the food he once hoarded now vanished into an abyss of endless hunger. One night, in a fit of desperation, he ransacked the village's granaries, consuming even the last reserves of food. The people of Adukrom could take no more. Mothers wept as their children cried out in hunger, and fathers clenched their fists in anger. It was clear their chief had become a monster. With their stores emptied and their stomachs aching, the villagers could no longer bear their chief's greed. Led by a courageous young woman named Afia, they gathered in front of the palace. Their faces were filled with anger and determination, their hands clutching torches, hoes, and machetes. The chief's rule had brought them nothing but suffering, and they had finally had enough. "Chief Kwame Poku, your greed has left us with nothing," Afia shouted, her voice ringing across the courtyard. "You feasted while we starved. Now we take back what is rightfully ours." The palace guards, seeing the suffering of their own families, hesitated. For the first time, the chief had no power over his people. He stumbled to the palace gates, clutching his stomach, his once magnificent robes dragging behind him. "Please," he gasped, "help me, I am cursed." Afia stepped forward, her eyes filled with both anger and pity. "Only the spirits can free you now," she said. "Seek the one you wronged." With no choice left, Chief Kwame Poku left Adukrom in search of the old man. He wandered the land, his body weak, his once proud face gaunt with suffering. Days passed before he found the same old man sitting beneath a sacred baobab tree. His tattered robes fluttered in the breeze, his eyes as wise and knowing as ever. Falling to his knees, the chief wept. "Forgive me," he cried. "I was blinded by greed. I hoarded while my people suffered. Please, lift this curse." The old man studied him for a long moment, then spoke. "Greed is like fire. It consumes all in its path. But you have learned your lesson." He reached into a pouch and pulled out a single grain of millet. "Eat this, and let it be the first meal you share with your people." With trembling hands, Chief Kwame Poku ate the grain. Instantly, the hunger vanished. He felt whole for the first time in weeks. Filled with gratitude, he hurried back to Adukrom, his heart pounding with newfound purpose. Upon his return, he did what no one expected. He opened the palace stores and gave everything to the people. He worked alongside them, tilling the land, rebuilding what his greed had destroyed. Though his body never regained its former strength, his heart became fuller than it had ever been. From that day forward, Chief Kwame Poku was no longer known for his wealth, but for his generosity, and the story of his downfall and redemption was told for generations as a warning. Greed brings destruction, but wisdom and humility bring true abundance. And so, Chief Kwame Poku learned a lesson the hard way, one that echoes through time. Greed is like a fire that consumes all in its path, but kindness and generosity are the true riches of life. In the end, what we hoard brings us misery, but what we share multiplies and nourishes not only others, but ourselves. What did you take away from this story? Let us know in the comments below. We love hearing your thoughts. If you enjoyed this tale, be sure to like this video, to support our work, subscribe to our channel so you never miss a new story, and share this wisdom with your friends and family. Let's keep the tradition of African storytelling alive. And remember, every story has a lesson, and every lesson has the power to change lives. Until next time, keep listening, keep learning, and keep growing. See you in the next video.